the psychedelics came, and I was in love. Okay, I'll say this. Maybe this is weird. I hope that when I die, even with all my meditation stuff, I hope I die with the same attitude that I would have when I would do a hit of acid. Do you know when a piece of art is finished?
Yeah, it's kind of like sex, you know.
Is it that obvious? It's like, wow, for people that have addiction problems, where whether they're inclined genetically or whether it's circumstantial, that these people hurt, and they're trying to not hurt. And unfortunately, what they're doing is hurting them even more, but they didn't know that because it felt good. So, to me, getting close to honesty, getting close to the moment, why I'm doing the NeuroVizr, the Visor we call it now, is because it helps.
For the second episode of the VESA podcast, I had the great honor of having Garnet Dupuis as my guest, and we discussed a bunch of very interesting things with consciousness exploration, the authentic spirit of the 60s psychedelics. He spent his life in brain research and kind of varied states of consciousness, from either psychedelics themselves earlier on in his life and then through technology and electronic microdosing. What is that? So I got to know about his device that he is the founder of, called NeuroVizr. I came across it in a very uncomfortable situation in my life. We had just lost our son in childbirth with my wife, and a friend of mine, kindly Winton, and his girlfriend then came to sit with us and just hang with us as we were in this shock and grief and all of this kind of thing. And he brought one of those devices to my home for us to have an experience with them. And so it was quite the thing to be introduced to his technology in that phase of our lives. And little did I know that I was about to meet him. And then about a year later in the Helsinki Biohacking Summit, as he was there speaking, and we became friendly and started discussing and noticed that we have a bunch of things in common and potential synergies for collaboration and all this kind of stuff. And I then just asked him to be a guest on the podcast, and kindly he said yes.
All right, Garnet, super happy to see you. Welcome to the VESA podcast.
I can honestly say I'm happy to be here. I look forward to it. We're on sort of I don't know if it's really the opposite side of the planet, but almost. So I'm here in northern Thailand, and you're not. So here we are, the marvels of satellites and digital process. Thank you. Happy to be here, Bessa.
Yeah, you got white sand, I've got white snow, so...
Yeah, well, I'm a mountain forest guy, so I'm up here in the north.
Okay.
A lot of green and like that, but not too much white sand.
Cool. Well, listen, we met at the Helsinki Biohacker Summit. This is maybe about a year and a half ago. I got introduced to your wonderful device, NeuroVizr. And even before we actually met, I got introduced to it through a mutual friend of ours. And it played a little bit of a significant role at a peak point in our lives with my wife. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But you're interested in a whole bunch of things that are very interesting to me as well. And I would say that you also kind of embody the original, let's say, the 60s psychedelic revolution spirit, which bizarrely kind of had a little bit of a peak and then went to weirdness ever since. But it has these pockets of emergence here and there. And now, to my delight, more and more in the biohacking community as well, the sort of exploration of consciousness. And I'm just wondering if you could take us on a little bit of a tour, how you ended up there yourself and how this whole thing started being a part of your life.
Okay, every time you tell a story, it gets a little bit better. So let me see what version I can come up with this time. Yeah, I'm a little bit older. Contrary to the current very hip bald head look, there was a delightful introduction into big change. I entered university. I'm a Canadian, French-Canadian farm boy. Entered university first in my family in the late 60s. And if you've ever heard the rumors, yeah, it was pretty much like that. The sex, drugs, rock and roll is the characterization. That's true, but of course it's much more than that. It was a time of profound change. And to have the good fortune of moving into my early maturity, late teens, into the 20s, you think you're all growing up at that time, right? That to come into that at a time of dynamic change was big good fortune, I would say. Big good fortune that there was a wave, there was a cultural wave that was moving, a huge wave, many waves, actually. So when you reflect back onto the time, it's really quite difficult, some say impossible, to describe what it was like because, they say that, and this is I work on the brain thing. So in brain change, conventionally, it is accepted that you could only change two things at one time, not more than two, one or two. And that to change that one or two with repeated reinforcement, it takes at least a couple of months for the state changes to come into trait changes. So knowing that neurologically, then maturing into your early 20s, late teens, early 20s, when the prefrontal cortex is still apparently trying to work itself out, when you've got free speech movement, when you've got desegregation, you've got women's rights, and you've got gay rights, and you have anti-war, and you have all of these things happening, the cultural bedrock seems to be like a trampoline. So where do you anchor yourself? What can you hold on to at that time other than your friends? And you would grab just about anything. And the only evident alternatives, by my experience, which is pretty much of that generation, was the stunning advent of psychedelics at that time, and the interaction with Asian spiritual traditions. So it's a very heady mix of influences that a person would try to integrate. And, I ended up, at the end of university, I went straight living in Isfahan, Iran, in the remarkable traditional oasis city of Persia. And then by the next year in northern India, and initiated with my first teacher, an Indian guru, which is very much typical of the time. I won't go much further because the story is an elaborate one, but the thing that links that time with this time in a very different way is the reappreciation and focus on consciousness, because that was what the time was about. The hippie era in the West was really focusing on an attempt at authenticity. The term a counterculture was born. The human potential movement was born. Now we talk about biohacking, which is, maybe it's my tilt, but I prefer the human potential movement because it's the idea of building and compounding on what is innate. Biohacking sounds like breaking into something and trying to control it, and doesn't quite
have shortcuts or all different kinds of things.
Yeah, so I have what I think are humorous definitions of biohacking, which I won't risk at this point. I have many friends that are quite evolved in that domain. I don't criticize it. It's just a little bit, to me, the era right now is a little bit of the sequel for me. It's like the what seemed primary at the time. For me, because of having, I had been there. Watching this right now does seem like not a replay, but more like a sequel culturally. And so that gives me advantages and disadvantages because, of course, it gives me a bias. And I have to be cautious because, I think I know what's right, which is foolish. But we all have something that we hold on to. For me, from my earliest childhood memories to this point in time, there's only one thing that's ever remained consistent. A lot of things have come and gone, but it is whatever that is, the attraction, the identification with, I don't know what to call it, the sacred, the mysterious, that thing. We can call it spirituality, which is, I don't even know what that means anymore. And I spent my whole life.
Most words have lost their meaning to that degree.
Yeah. So, to know me, I do my best. I try to be a teacher, a healer, a good guy, a designer, a creator. I characterize myself, although naturally I have fucked up, numerous times, quite well. I consider
that's an important part of the spiritual process.
Well, okay, that's a nice argument, but thank you. But anyway, I try to be a good guy. I try to be a good person and do good things. So, here I am now. And I think, well, in that sense, nothing has ever really changed. Maybe the vehicle has changed. I can say one thing, and this I think is one of our bonding qualities, because I immediately felt hooked into you, even though I didn't know you, when I saw your examples on screen of your art. And it immediately happened for me. Being biased and arrogant throughout a lot of my life, the belief that some things are good and some things are bad. I was raised a Roman Catholic, so it's very hard because when you're raised as a kid to believe in the us and them model, where, we're okay and you're not, there's a tendency for that kind of, critical binary comfort zone to be there. But anyway, I have a extremely heightened appreciation of what we'll call the creative process. And I see it now as being, I don't know if it is the divine, but it certainly has divine capacities or qualities. And we'll talk more about that because I have some perspectives that I'd like to share with you to see what you think about that.
Yeah, most definitely. If I may just stop you for a little bit, because there were already so many different things and directions. And it was one of them is that my first real encounter to brain power outside of, I suppose, instinct was when I got to learn a little bit about neurolinguistic programming. And I just did a model shoot just a few days ago where one of the models was saying that she has this OCD kind of situation going on, and it's dominating her life and it's really just cramping down on her. And we just did this simple exercise where I asked her to close her eyes and then imagine that sound that is telling her to do something that she actually knows already innately that isn't going to be helpful to her. And then we just made the sound not come from behind her, from an authoritative position. We gave it Donald Duck's voice and put it to the floorboard sort of angle coming at her. And we started playing with that sound a little bit. And all of a sudden she started laughing. And then I asked her, well, now go back to taking that voice seriously that is telling you to do the faucet like 74 times before you can leave the house or something like that. And she immediately went, hold on a minute, I can't really. So one thing that would be now normally medically treated or analyzed and to death or whatever was just in an instant already. I'm not saying it's totally gone. I'm sure she will have to wrestle with it. But just as what kind of tools we have at our disposal that should be in schools that aren't. But commenting even before what you were saying, because I've certainly resonated, even though I'm born 78, but I resonated a lot with
I'm almost 78.
Excellent.
Freaky, but go ahead. I'm 74, but okay. It's just, a number is funny. Right.
I resonated, I would say, with the original spirit of the psychedelic movement and all that it stood for. But then what seemed to happen in the 80s, it was that it was usurped by the bureaucrat class all of a sudden, and it became the establishment without the actual perks of the psychedelic movement. It became sort of this ill-bitted machine almost of what's led us to the point of where we are now in the political system. And from that degree, the weird thing in the circulation back is that it seems to me that now if you want to be counterculture, you would believe in God, you would have a family, you would have a monogamous relationship, and you would have these sort of confinements that would have felt, when I was a kid, restrictions, but all of a sudden they've become a part of something that is of major interest because the world seems to be losing its mind to a certain degree. So my question is, do you feel like, and that's obviously a benefit to being in the East and having been to Dubai and Thailand, and the woke craziness hasn't really reached there yet to the degree that it has in the West. But how do you kind of coincide or parallel those two things with the original kind of movement upward and where it is now?
Shit. Let me think about it. It's a big question.
And one full of minds as well.
Yeah. Well, I think many discoveries go through a romantic period, the honeymoon of whatever it is, and that then the natural challenges of a sustained relationship. Let's say, you meet somebody, you're in love, it's great, all the hormones are pumping, if you reduce it that way. So I think, we tend to romanticize what appears to be changes that could be solutions. We want these things to work because we're having a hard time. So I think it's kind of an inhale, exhale kind of process. And that, call it a swing from conservative to liberal or whatever, that I think that I think the instability is a lot more normal than we would like it to be. Uncertainty is a lot more common than absolutism. We would like an answer, and sometimes I think, or I say that it's well, I'll make it dramatic. It's impossible to get the right answer from the wrong question, and or like, what kind of view do we have? We'd like to imagine, a golden age, or we would like to imagine when life is all in balance and harmony. I think that I guess I don't really have a clear answer, except that I don't know why I can give you answers, but this kind of, it's like a bunch of ideas. I think that...
But even in the cosmos, there are stars colliding that birthed new places and whatever. Life is hardly like this whole thing. If you go to a peace conference and then you go and ask those people, are you at peace with yourself, or is there collisions happening inside of you constantly? So many people who just preach peace, they are actually incapable of it themselves constantly. So we're just inhabiting these paradoxes constantly and trying to manage our way, I suppose.
Well, yeah, that's as good an answer as anything. I started off a Roman Catholic, but because my orientation is spiritual, whatever that means. Like I said before, the mysterious, the divine. So, then it's like, I don't really think so. And I was hypercritical of it. Then came the psychedelic phase, which was the psychedelic era. I went to university, tried to drink beer. I don't like alcohol. It's like, okay, then there was weed. And weed was just, and hash at the time. It was fantastic. You get some good Afghani hash or something, and you sit around with your friends in your shit apartment. You're in university, and you buy some food, and you smoke weed, and you listen to music, and you laugh. For me, it felt like a lot of fun. And then most of the guys around me that smoked a lot just seemed to be getting dumber and dumber by the day. I apologize to people that like weed. And I thought, and so then the psychedelics came, and I was in love. Okay, I'll say this, maybe this is weird. I hope that when I die, even with all my meditation stuff, I hope I die with the same attitude that I would have when I would do a hit of acid, usually always alone. I'm not a party guy. And the excitement of waiting to get off, laying back and knowing that this exploration was about to begin was just delightful for me. I was like the happiest guy anywhere. So maybe that helped, the whole concept of set and setting. My set was pretty positive, pretty innocent, really. Just the funny things in life. The quick thing, the first time I did acid on campus was from this friend of mine, Blanche, strange, very cool, totally hip, English hippie, lived off campus, kind of eccentric. I got acid. So it's like, here we go. I'm on campus. And so I take the hit. I was like, man, okay, here we go. Fantastic. So there I am, just pretty much in a very pleasurable liftoff. And I go to walk outside. And who comes walking down the sidewalk? A group of men led by my father, who was a fire chief, and there was this symposium on I thought on campus I was free from all constraints. It might have been on another planet. So on my talk about iconic or iconoclastic or something like that, that just when I'm getting off, who comes walking face to face, and I have to, and I'm like early hippie, that thing, and here he comes with his friends. And I have to, Dad, hi, literally. And I can't run away. I mean, the impulse was, fuck, but you're tripping. So it was like the time is either fast or slow. You don't know quite what to do, especially when it's your first time, So I walk up, hi, Dad, hi, double entendre at the point. And I have to, hi, Dad, I have to meet his, guys. They're all straight. I mean, they're, firefighter pros. And I have no idea. He never mentioned it to me, which is probably, to save my mind at the time. So for whatever, and there are other similar things, which I'll skip over, but the peculiar things in life, the coincidence, synchronicity, good luck, bad luck, I don't know. What does that mean? I have no idea. I don't think it means anything except it's humorous. In hindsight, it's humorous,
But there's also that thing, is like the nature of reality, I suppose, is that some of those things that I've experienced in psychedelics have felt more real than some of the real in this world, in this kind of problem-solving consciousness that what we have. But the juxtaposition being that the brutal nature of where we are in these physical bodies and the world that we need to inhabit, where a lion devours a gazelle type of situation, or whatever mountain crumples on top of your head, doesn't really get influenced by these experiences at all. But if you don't have any of these psychedelic kind of out-of-body experiences or kind of spiritual anchor of sorts, where you don't take this body, and despite the brutality of our experiences here, if you don't have any oxygen that can be breathing space for that thing, I don't think you will be able to die well. I don't think you will be able to have much courage in life either, because you're so protective of the physical shell, as opposed to going on the adventure, which might have brutal kind of things happen to you no matter what you do with your consciousness. So I think it's a beautiful example of that, is that, all of a sudden you think that you're in a utopia and you're having the best time of your life, and then you get directly juxtaposed by that. And I suppose that's the piece that we all have to do with this world.
I'll tell you another story on that theme. When I lost my virginity, Roman Catholic, it was basically impossible to get anything going on the circle of friends I had, because I went to a religious school, nuns and the whole thing. So university, and there was this party at a frat house. I was never a frat, but before the hair grew long enough, you could get in the door. So I'm there, there's a big party, and there's a downstairs, and it's jammed with people, and everybody's drinking. So I I bump into this, at that time older woman, which is like 2 years older than me, and apparently she was, I don't know, she was willing. I don't know exactly how it happened. I know her name, but I won't say it. Anyway, it's like fantastic. Let's go upstairs in the bedroom where they have all the all the bunk beds and all the coats are there and everything. So we get there, and I'm thinking, there, despite Roman Catholicism, there is a God, because I'm about to get laid for the first time in my life. So there we are, and it was, speaking of brutal, but anyway, she was very kind. And so we're there, very typical missionary, I'm on top. And it's happening enough to know that it's happened, but just at that same time, I feel a hand, a big hand, but a gentle hand holding my ankle.
Okay.
There was nobody else in the room. And so I feel this, I sort of like pause, and then I hear this voice, very deep voice, very kind voice. And the voice said, "I'm sorry, son, but this is a bust." The police had come to break up the frat party, right? Because there are all of these underage drinkers and the whole thing. And this big cop had come upstairs, opened the door, and he sees this young guy, getting laid. He didn't know for the first time, but it was. And this, this big hand, but gentle hand. It wasn't like, but it was there. And then this voice. It's such an empathic voice.
Well, you would
sorry,
have at that point. I mean, he can relate.
He said, I'm sorry, son. Son, not like you little bastard. I'm sorry, son, but this is a bust.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, so it's like there's this definition that is emerging, and this is from Jordan Peterson, that he said he's writing a book apparently called Those Who Wrestle with God, and apparently this is what Israel means. I'm none the wiser of that whole thing, but the
Sure.
idea of faith being something that essentially means that you wrestle with this kind of personal God or cosmos or this kind of thing, because you from there you go from there is a God to fuck you, essentially, in a super kind of progressive this kind of way. So, but I'll just tell you my story. I was at a camping area. I'm 13 years old, and it's my friend's parents. They have a caravan thing, and we go there.
This is
for
your
the summer,
first acid or your first lay?
First lay.
At 13. God damn
yeah.
it. I don't want to hear it. You're like, I had to wait too many years, but all right, go ahead. You're not a Catholic, obviously. Right.
Well, it's
Okay.
it was such a, but it's a little bit similar. So what happens is that it's the midsummer party. It's in Finland, that's a big thing, and everyone gets together and drinks and has bonfires and whatever. So we're at this camping area, and we're starting to. My friend is a year older, so he's 14. So both of us are just starting to get drunk during the day, and his parents are there. They're pretty chill. I mean, we were able to wrangle it. So. And then towards the evening, we're there at the sort of early evening by these rocks. And then there's these that I later get to know, a 17-year-old girl. And she's a little bit hammered, and I'm a bit hammered. And I don't know how I managed to kind of convince her to be a part of this thing. But so it was, and I found myself in her tent. And just really that was a good kind of thing. And then I was able to even emerge from that tent so that her friends were around that were significantly older, as I, a 13-year-old boy, crawl out of this tent and kind of with this hooray type of situation. And all her friends are looking at her and me and going like, what the hell is going on over here? But then I did get an STD from her directly from the first encounter. So,
It wasn't her first time at the rodeo.
No, it seems so. But this hero moment turned into a bit of a thing, because then I had to go to the doctor, my 13-year-old self. And there's this, slightly older doctor who's just looking at me like, I'm not angry, I'm disappointed, disappointed, but a little bit angry and still more disappointed. Yeah. And I just remember the excruciating moment of just having to be grilled by this guy a little bit and feeling like I do deserve it.
So your version is, I'm sorry, son, but this is an STD.
Yeah, I got introduced to the repercussions very fast.
Well, and here we are, seeking the sacred, and in the midst of what we'll call ordinary lives. Even though, I used to think I was special, then the realization I'm pretty average. That here we are, and this is to me, it's like either you're humble or you get humbled, but there's no avoiding the circumstances of the process of discovery. And what do you do with that? What do you do? I do what I do, and you do what you're doing. And, as much as I know you, you're a good person, you're a good man, and you're doing your best to contribute. And I think in many ways, and I'll refer here to, I have a lot of thoughts about art and your art, by the way, because one is, I'm a fan.
Mutual fan club, by the way. So,
thank you, dude. There's this idea about ritual that I think in many ways can also be applied to art. And I'd heard that ritual is, this may not be exactly true, it's kind of an analogy or metaphor, but that ritual is an attempt to make the invisible visible.
Or even something inner science, I suppose.
Something like that. And when what I expect, and I'd like you to tell me more, that your urge, the call, the feeling of making art, that I think that metaphoric definition might apply, that it's an attempt to make the invisible visible in a manner that makes a connection. Because if it, I don't know, it's something like that. I'm quite intrigued. Well, consciousness itself is the only thing to me that is interesting. Everything else is kind of not the same. And how you dance with your own experience of being an artist, to be a creative, that you pull things out of the etheric quality of feeling and consciousness, and you actualize it so that other people like me can experience it in some way.
Yeah, very, very much so. And it means a lot that, first of all, you resonated with it, and thank you for the kind words. But it's become increasingly rare, I would say, to my surprise, that people would kind of, to my feeling at least, sense what is actually there, what is being communicated. And something happened from the year 2000 forward, and the new generations that don't, we now have these three-dimensional worlds that we can build in the metaverse and everything, but sort of emotionally and philosophically, it's become flatland. So there's been a little bit of a reversal of some of those roles. But I'll tell you, and this might sound a little bit high and mighty, but it does speak to how I solved the problem of creativity. To begin with, I think I was blessed with this thing to a degree, because when I was 5 years old, I turned my parents' pots and pans into a drum kit, and something was coming through me clearly, and then there was a whole bunch of trauma that was added into the mix to give it jet fuel. But philosophically, what I think is happening is, because sometimes I do get asked about, how do you do this creativity thing? And it's, why am I interested in religion or spirituality or consciousness or these kinds of things? And every single, not every single, but many of the major works of, let's say, religious texts, they start with the story of creation altogether. First there was nothing, or first there was light, and then all of a sudden everything emerges. And then if you look at our world...
or some turtle.
Yeah.
Some turtle.
In the Finnish mythology of Kalevala, it's an egg. So first there was the egg.
Okay.
Right?
Cool.
So, but essentially...
Where did they ever get that idea? Maybe
Seems kind of logical, I suppose. Yeah, solves the chicken and the egg thing, I suppose, from their point.
Yeah.
Anyway, the idea being that if you truly accurately, and this has been helped by the psychedelic experiences or meditations or these kinds of things, if you look at our world, the physical world accurately, everything is in constant process of birth and death and creation and destruction all at the same time. If you are bored, essentially what that means is that you are disconnected from the place in which you are. If you do inhabit a body. So what I realized at some point is that the more I peel off the layers of whatever my containment is, that I don't feel like I'm a part of this world, that I just somehow, like Alan Watts said, many people feel like they're just in between their ears, like here, and then they popped into the world and they didn't emerge from it. That is the problem, that if no matter what the hell you have to do in order for you to feel connected to where you are, then you don't really have a problem of the blank page, assuming that you don't have like fatigue or health problems or things like that, which are a part of it. But in normal consciousness, then if you don't feel creative, then it just kind of means that you're disconnected.
Okay, fair enough, I think so much, you kind of tickled it there, so much, maybe I would say for most of us, so much depends on how you feel physically. Are you sick or are you well? You know, that when you're well, it's so, it's left foot, right foot. You keep on going. And sometimes it's like any philosophy in a storm, to twist any port in a storm for a ship. Depending on kind of how you feel. When I was going through my second divorce, I never thought I'd have my marriages numbered, but that it was real rough. It was really rough. Like the first one was really bad. The second one was really bad. I don't know. It's a hard thing, and I thought I was, like I mentioned this before, because of arrogance. I thought I was a special guy because I'm intelligent, because I meditate. I don't know. You make up this mental movie of me thing, and I thought, well, this is really bad, but because I'm such an elevated, person, I'll just it'll work out. And it wasn't. I was dog shit. It was really bad, and I came up with a saying out of it, a bumper sticker, which may not be revelatory to most people. It was to me, is that it's not easy when it's hard. I thought that, I'm so cool that even when it's hard, it's not hard for me. Because I'm, this, that. And the fact is that at different points, I don't care what's happening, call it the Achilles heel in persona or whatever, but that there are times when it's just hard. And to accept that it's hard is a great place, because you can make it even harder by giving yourself a hard time that you're having a hard time. So, this, like you say, the cosmic planets being made, sustained, like the Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva thing, that this is life, that I don't know, some people say it's lessons to learn. Some people don't even care to characterize it like that. But being creative with your life is, to me, the only sensible response to a lot of weird things, uncontrollable things when it's good and it's bad, like the weather changing so much. And the idea of, I don't know, all this superhuman things and all, I think there are a lot of places to hide from learning, and some of those places to hide might be an accomplishment or, fame, fortune, that whole thing, or even, what sort of the idea of spiritual bypassing, where you're doing all these spiritual things.
Love
it's
and
just
light,
another,
love and light.
Yeah, or the other, bad, slash and lash whatever it is, but that it's tricky. It's knowing what, pardon my swearing, knowing what the fuck's going on and what the fuck to do is not easy. And, that's part of the tragic, comedic quality of life, and why, if nothing else, like, be kind to each other as much as possible. I don't know. This is I don't know what this is exactly, but I want to introduce a topic. I'm going to call it the psychoactive agent concept. A psychoactive agent. So I'll start like this. Maybe we'll get to the point where I'll tell you the last time I did acid, which was on a rooftop in Isfahan, Iran. But okay, that I'll frame it this way. All psychedelic compounds are psychoactive agents, but not all psychoactive agents are psychedelic compounds.
Okay.
So,
do elaborate.
All right. Yeah, sure. That this is a fortified belief that I have that is shared by many people who study the brain. And the brain increasingly is recognized as having a very broad range of conscious possibilities, a very broad range of experience and expression. And these are all natural, they're normal, and they're healthy. Some are used more than others. And we have the ability, I'll frame it this way as I have recently. It's a little binary, but you can excuse that. It's okay. That we have an ordinary rational mind, because we don't experience our brain directly. We experience what we call mind, which is the function of the brain. And we won't go into the mind-brain hard problem thing. Skip it. But that most of the time we are, like right now, we're functioning with our ordinary rational mind. It's very good at information processing and integration and symbols and all these things. And we also have an aspect of our brain, an actual neurological, physiological capacity to have an extraordinary expanded mind. So ordinary rational mind, extraordinary expanded mind. I don't like the terms like altered states or non-ordinary states. They sound somehow with a negative bias. And I don't like if it's altered from what? Well, obviously from, the good thing. That's the bad thing. Or the idea that the extraordinary mind is somehow a malfunctioning of the ordinary mind. And that's that kind of pathological model where the early, in the early mid 1900s leading up to, 70 famously, that a lot of the research with psychedelics, they didn't call them psychedelics at that point. They called them psychotomimetics. The idea that psychiatrists could now have the direct experience of what it was like to be crazy for short periods of time. So there would be, the advice was take a psychedelic, oftentimes, the early ones, and then you know what it's like to be crazy. So I don't like this characterization of the negative. Like in our science, we tend to do this. In personality psychology, oftentimes they say they're extroverts and introverts. And the definition of extrovert is they're social. And the introvert, antisocial. Well, antisocial is not a definition. It's the negative of another term. So this idea of the culturally preferred state, extroverts are rewarded. Introverts are not rewarded. I'm sorry, that's kind of the way our society works. So I don't like to do that.
Sorry to interrupt,
Yep.
but doesn't
okay.
it make sense from the sense of what I kind of just said earlier about the different, when you're in your problem-solving consciousness, assuming there's a village and then all of a sudden everyone's high on some strange mushroom and there's another village that decides to come and take all the women and resources, then it's not very useful to be super high on mushrooms. Or then if it's a tiger in the bushes and then you're just sort of in La La Land. So I think there's a natural progression to this problem-solving consciousness to have the first layer of protection like this. And of course, we don't really have to be there all the time if we have these, call it safe spaces to be that. But it is a privilege to have that kind of exploration to begin with. And then, of course, there's the other aspect is that if you don't have your mind expanded, then you're much easier to control from top down also. So those two things kind of compressed is...
I don't know. That's a little comic book to me, meaning kind of like iconic symbols and concepts. The whole village is high on mushrooms and somebody comes and beats you up. I don't know. I don't know about that story. I don't disagree with you. I just don't know. To me, it seems a bit extreme. What I do feel comfortable with is the fact that the brain has a range of operational modes, and that there are sets of problems that are very linear in cause and effect, and the rational mind, the neocortex, does a very good job with that. And then there are times, like in mathematics, I'm no mathematician, believe me, but in a formula, when you have 3 or more variables, you cannot solve it in a linear fashion. You have to go nonlinear, and you don't work with certainty, you work with probability. We have an aspect in our brain that can shift into nonlinearity, multi-factored information processing that is irrational by definition, but highly successful at information processing at a higher level of dimension. And you can't explain it because it's not really the realm of symbolic words. The reason we don't spend a lot of time there is the one that you said. It's not practical in a 3-dimensional problem-solving world, but it's highly practical when you enter into levels of existential meaning and purpose where you can't think your way out of that. You can, like I say sometimes, there are problems that you can't think your way out of, but you can feel your way into the solutions. And our brain has that ability. Now, what I'm saying in a roundabout way is I work with a principle called the psychoactive agent. That a psychoactive agent is some kind of stimulation that will activate a shift in the brain-mind processing. It's psychoactive. It's an agent. Acid is such an agent that has certain characteristics. I believe, for example, that art can also serve as a psychoactive agent. That when you experience art of a certain type to a certain person, it will cause a shift in information processing that is sometimes almost impossible to explain, but you feel different because of your experience of the art. So to me, when you go and you spend time in the extraordinary expanded mind, which has a range, just like the rational mind has a range, that when you move out of that and back into the rational mind, the facts of your life are pretty much the same, but your feeling about the facts have changed, have shifted somehow. That the art I'm using here, and this I believe, that not only the art, but the artist, that you are in your embodiment a psychoactive agent. Yeah, and that definitely. Because you're a disruptor, you're a mind opener, you're a feeling explorer. And when my mind, brain, encountered, even on a laptop screen, some samples of your art, something shifted in me. Something shifted. There was a state shift. And to me, that is a proving, maybe not, blast off with acid. That's not the issue of degree. It's the issue of actuality, that our life is filled with psychoactive agency, so that we are not stuck only in a rational, linear, problem-solving mind, that we have the ability to spend time in that extraordinary expanded state. Now, this goes into deep brain theory. The thing is, the brain itself, it's an organ, it's physical. So we don't have to say, is there a mind or not? Is there a brain? Yes, there is. So the brain as an organ consumes around 20% of our entire somatic metabolic energy. It is a resource consumption device that operates at very high levels of energy transformation. Inside the brain, there's always competition for that resource. I'll give the quick example. There's only so much blood in your body and my body. So we have to have the blood move according to the functions. Skeletal muscles, digestive organs. The blood has to be shared throughout the body. In the brain, the energetic metabolic resources have to be shared. And to move into an expanded, extraordinary state is a very high energy expended state. The brain prefers to not stay there too long because it's so expensive. But the expense is worth it because of the information processing that takes place at these complex levels of interactions. And we can see it now in fMRIs when a person does psilocybin or whatever, even meditators at high levels. You can see the change happen, and these connections take place the ordinary mind doesn't permit. Like Huxley said, our brain is a set of reducing valves. And every once in a while we just open the tap, but we can't keep it flowing too hard for too long. So I think our life is filled with psychoactive agency. I think one of the innate psychedelic agents, to use that word now as a blend, one of the innate psychoactive agents, I think it's really psychedelic, is humor. Humor, when you laugh your ass off, that is not your ordinary rational mind. No, you flip into this ironic parallel universe. You know, the definition of humor is a benign violation of expectation. You know, you set it up, and then the punchline takes it's a surprise. And I don't know if there's a movie, an old French movie from the early 80s, Quest for Fire. I love the movie. I saw it with a doll girlfriend, Francine, and we were ripped on fantastic weed. That might have influenced it. But I watched it recently again. And it's a caveman thing, Quest for Fire. They didn't know how to make fire. But the point is, there are two scenes in the movie where because they're different subspecies, an advanced species and a dumbass one, and even more dumbass. And there was this moment, the discovery of humor. The advanced chick, one of the dumb guys is there, and a rock falls and hits him on the head, and she laughs. Hey, she starts laughing. And these guys are all freaked out. They don't know what they can't get. What's laughter? What is this thing? And later on in the movie, they get it. And the thing hits in the head, and they and what the hell is humor? What the hell? I mean, to me, it's an inborn psychedelic, psychoactive agency that flips us out of linear. I mean, when you especially if you're like ha funny, but if you get full on funny, belly laughing funny, what happens? What's that?
This is I suppose the whole thing, and why I'm a very much super minority in doing any kind of critique for the woke movement and all those things that it now represents, because it seems so repressive. One of the things that it makes it almost impossible to do is to be humorous and to be wrong and all those very important things for the process itself for us to feel. But I kind of realized that at some point that I'd used the word psychedelic many times, and I thought I understood what it was, but then I hadn't actually ever gone into the etymology of the words, which I do believe are to reveal the soul, essentially, is what psychedelic means. So therefore, many of the tools, no matter what it is, if it's like plant medicine, as they call it, or whether it's humor or art or your NeuroVizr device, or whatever it is. But maybe this is a little bit of a bridge to talk a little bit about your device, because even before I knew who you were or we hadn't met, we had this catastrophic event, and this goes to the juxtaposition of brutal and consciousness again. We had this very unfortunate event happen with my wife where we lost our son in childbirth. And I'll tell you a little bit about how the actual nuts and bolts of what happened is that we went to the hospital after 24 hours of labor, and we just happened to encounter, unfortunately, this quite arrogant and flippant nurse who was there to greet us and did the initial examination and everything, and then just said, you're not ready yet, go back home. And we were first time doing this and didn't really know what to do. And I even asked her, because I did notice that her attitude wasn't really the best. And I was like, well, how do I know when we should come back? And she just said, well, how do I? Well, no one knows when you're going to give birth, but you're not ready yet, so go back home. Yeah. Whoa. So, and this is meant to be one of the best hospitals to do this in the world.
So
Okay.
we come back home, and then it's 48 hours after this, and I'm really starting to be concerned because my wife was not in a good state at all anymore after that, and but she didn't want to go back to the hospital before it was time, because the last thing she wanted was to be turned back again, and this kind of a situation. But then my ex-girlfriend, actually, who knew of the situation, said that now VESA, take her in, period. And in we go,
Yes.
and I already remember that there was a mood in the taxi as we're going in that something is not right. And lo and behold, then we learned that my son doesn't have a pulse anymore when we get in there, and that's quite the ordeal. And the next 24 hours from there is spent with these medieval tools trying to get this dead baby out of my wife, and it's become a historic thing inside of that hospital. So, and this is unfortunately the part of my life that some of it is legendary in the good sense, and some of it is like gets notorious in the bad way. Regardless, we're not long out of this process, kind of trying to recover any sense of the world, as we're kind of trying to reconfigure our lives after this event. And it is a friend of mine, Wintham, who is this very super character as well. I'm not sure if you've met him, but he's Ethiopian.
I don't recall.
Ethiopian. Anyway, he had the NeuroVizr device, and he came to our home, and he gave both me and my wife this experience of what it was like, because they compassionately came to sit with us with his girlfriend and just spend some time despite this
That's
very
heartbreak,
awful
man.
situation. But this is how I got introduced to your device, and I do remember Lotta going through this thing of how emotionally moving it was to get this experience, and it was a little bit of a relief during a time of super distress. And that's how I got to know about your device. And then once we kind of met and I resonated with everything that you were saying, it was just like, oh, very cool, and we started talking. But that's again an important tool at our disposal that can help in very real situations to kind of alleviate some of the horrors that we might have to go through. But so being the bridge, just as a personal experience, and I would love to know much more about it, because I do have trouble sleeping, and I know that there's programs that help with that and whatever, and I'll buy it eventually. So can you talk about what led to the invention of this device for you?
Wow. What led? It's the same early story. Why are we attracted to certain things and not attracted to other things? I don't know. For me, going back to university days again, I was fascinated. Okay, the psychedelics certainly helped, but they weren't the only reason. I was a guy that had a suitcase and a duffel bag full of stuff. Early strobe lights, black lights. I bought, some old devices, whatever, because I was just drawn to the shocking beauty and strangeness and mystery of the way that consciousness was so manipulated by the convergence of light and sound, what I call the first language: mechanical vibration, electromagnetic radiation, photons and phonons, yin and yang. And that had never, ever left me. After my time with my Indian guru, which was, more than a decade, then I studied under a Korean Taoist teacher, very remarkable, and then for the past 25 years or more now, under a Tibetan Dzogchen teacher and tradition. This stuff is at the heart and core of my persona. I'm just, that's the thing that is interesting to me. So I got involved with complementary health care, and I've done a lot of things. I'm a patchwork learner. In the early university, sometimes, believe me, we even went to class, sometimes, because most of the education was happening in the quater, in the streets, or in the apartments. Come on, you put together two pills along with great music. One is it's not really a pill, but one is acid and the other is the birth control pill. And great music. What are you going to do? So No, because I lived around the world. I live in Thailand. I've always been attracted to Asia. I mentioned my last full hit of acid was on a rooftop in Isfahan, Iran. There's a picture of
When was that, by the way? How long ago was it?
Come on, you're making me seem like old or something.
Oh no, not at all. I'm curious. Was it a year ago?
No, it was not. Dude, it was 1971.
Ah, okay. So it's been a while. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a while. All right. I'm very pro psychedelic, but I made a decision at a certain point because I was exposed to yogic practices and things living, being in Asia, that I wanted to find out like how the yogis were doing it. Well, I mean, a lot of the sadhus are smoking hash all day. That's not the point. But that, like, what's happening here? Like the psychoactive agency, whether it's meditation, fasting, dark retreats, cold exposure, whatever, like something is happening here, and it's way too interesting to not pay attention to. So, time. I'm actually quite a good technical designer. I couldn't code my way to save my life, but I'm a good designer. I'm a theoretical designer with some skill sets, as it turns out. And so I was working in technologies for the past 25 years. Came to Thailand, living up in the mountains, doing wild animal rescue conservation work. I think, I'm retired. I have a big spa in Bangkok now, 20 years. So I thought, circumstance. Then there's all this information coming out about neuroplasticity, the ability for the brain to change, and all these techniques and all. And I was drawn back into this domain where, here I am now. I've co-founded a company here in Thailand, domiciled Singapore, Estonia. Why? Because it's a timing issue. It's a timing issue that we've been able to make music for as long as humans know. The first instrument is the voice. The second was probably percussion of some sort. And then everything else. There was no saxophone music before the saxophone instrument. So instrumentation technology has been advancing music at now an alarming rate. I heard a story, I think it's true, the first time with a gramophone in the street and I don't know what city it is, so I think it's true, that they're playing this opera music or something, and people were fainting because music was this ephemeral process. You had to be there. When the music stopped, it stopped. That there was no way of revisiting it. There was no way of holding it. There was no way of creating it other than with a musician. So recorded. So here we are, and the short story in my mind is that we are now at a technical turning point where we can do with light what we have done with sound. That I'll say there's this music made of sound. Now we're at a position where there's this music made of light. When you look at what technology is doing to enable your art form, which is a visual form for the most part, I'm also interested in a visual form of art that is generated naturally within the brain. It's an eyes closed exploration of what you do, eyes open. So what brought me here? I don't know. Good luck. I'll say a bunch of good luck. But it's a timing thing. I was involved doing all this stuff, the brain entrainment. Well, the brain entrainment and all, I was doing this 40 years ago. And, when you go back to the university days, I was doing strobe lights and all that. I mean, people would either love me coming in or hate me coming in because everybody's high and it's like here comes Garnet and he's, upping the ante on things. That I stopped doing full-on psychedelics. I've played with, here and there, but my psychedelic phase, which was glorious, ended when I decided I wanted to see what I could do innately or organically or something like that. I have nothing against compounds in the least. I don't like getting drunk. I feel like shit, and I don't really, weed doesn't really do it for me. Partly the THC ups my blood pressure, and that, I don't want that. So, what the hell? I'm a boring guy otherwise, in that sense, socially. But what I find is now, with the same glee that that a musician must have when they get a full synthesizer and keyboard, and it's just like endless. The horizon, you can't even see the horizon of what the creative possibilities can be. When you sit and you do what you do, which is multi-factored, you know, the boundaries aren't there when you swim in it. And for me, right now, the opportunity to use what I'll call biophilic, meaning life-loving, bio and philic, philia, love, not biophobic, biophilic technology that is compatible with the expanded mind to engender these experiences that are problem-solving, relieving, escapist, soothing. You know, what I'm looking for right now, and the claim is getting pretty close when you look at common culture, is that this is a kind of, you could say it's a drug-free psychedelic for people that have that experience, but it's also a drug-free Xanax. You know, that the stress, the need we have. You know, I'm writing another white paper right now called Mental Health in the Age of Angst. Because I do believe that we're in an age of existential angst right now. And what can we do? What can solve angst? I don't think it's not an issue of changing all the facts. You can't really change all the facts, but you can change your feeling, your perspective. And I am confident in saying that spending periods of time in what I'll call the extraordinary expanded mind, I don't know if it's the cure, but it's definitely the therapy to evaporate angst so that the magic returns, the appreciation returns, that it doesn't have to be mystical, vertical. It can be horizontal and naturalism. But I think that our brain has the capacity to help reduce the angst that is unsolvable. You know, if you like the existentialists, Camus and Sartre and all those folks, the second phase of existentialism, it's like the early stage with Nietzsche, and said, you know, God is dead, life is absurd, but don't worry, human nature can work it out. And then World War I comes, World War II comes, like, well, I guess we can't, we're pretty fucked. So there's really nothing, and it's just all a hopeless mess. Have a good time. I don't believe in that. I believe in higher levels of problem solving, and I think our brain, you know, I study a lot in different disciplines. Neuroanthropology is like, it's the new pepperoni pizza. I mean, it's just fantastic. It's a very early discipline. It's only about 15 years old. Looking at anthropological processes from a neurological point of view, it's kind of like running parallel to neurotheology, but more anthropological. And they say, with a degree of confidence, that they believe, I love the term, that there are these neuro-gnostic structures in the brain, Gnostic like Gnosticism, knowledge, high knowledge, that we have a neuro-Gnostic structure aspect in the brain that is capable of working, like again, back to Huxley, when you open up the reducing valves. You could talk about the reticular activating system, you can talk about the thalamus. There are these neurological systems and structures in the brain that reduce the flow of stimulation down, down, down. But they have the capacity of opening up for relatively short periods of time. And that's like a good belly laugh. That's like a great hit of acid. That's like a great orgasm. That's like great art. That's like great meditation. That's like a great cold plunge. All of these things that our brain has that ability for relatively short. But
how do you feel about this whole thing? Because it was like many people say that the more you focus on yourself, the more you get misery. And then there's the second thing, which is, I suppose, the modern scientific paradigm often is that the brain is the generator as opposed to the antenna. And the more, like when I started going on stages to speak, I realized that the less I have the attention on myself and more on the audience, the better I felt. And the more that I started thinking of my brain as something that is a device for me to receive as opposed to generate, again, the healthier that I felt. And And like now there's these people like the advisor to World Economic Forum, the Noel Havari, and he's considered like this great intellectual, and he doesn't understand that there's any substructure to stories. He just thinks that everything is a story and manipulative, and there's really no innate human rights. He's just a materialist, reductionist, crazy person, and these stories are going about through the kind of evolution of the scientific process. I'll get to the point very soon. It's essentially that for me it was very important to have...
Take your time, dude. Slow down. I'll listen to you. Take your time.
I had a great advancements with my psychedelic the first experiences, and they opened up my mind. My last mushroom trip was about 3 or 4 years ago now. And it was such a whopper that I realized that I have to melt this a long time in order for me to be able to integrate what the advice was or the learnings were into my real life. And it's only now, after this long period of time, that I start to feel like maybe I'd be ready at some point. But it's not really been necessary. And one of the mitigating things has been these things. It's essentially just these prayer beads and going through the chanting the holy name time and time again, maybe in voice or just in my head, and I go through these beads and just repeat this, and I get to the same state that it's not like a sort of whammy in the back of the head like a psychedelic launch off is, but it's a steady drip of the same consciousness that keeps me connected to something that keeps advising my day-to-day life in this kind of way, because it's kind of unsustainable or ill-advised to do something that is a psychotropic all the time, to do these things, but it probably doesn't tax you in a similar sense to have NeuroVizr experiences, and it doesn't tax you certainly to do these sort of internal bead type situations. So would you agree with that it's a more sustainable way of doing it, and of course legal anywhere where you go?
Well, yeah, I mean, there are like, like 7 launch points in what you just talked about. I'll go back to the brain. By the way, I'm not a materialist. I gave up that discussion a long time ago. Like, I don't understand this dichotomy, because we know that matter is not material. We already know that our brain is made up of molecules with atoms. Atoms are 99% space, and there aren't little marbles going around the nucleus. These are probability excited states. That if we know that matter is not material, then that means our brain is not material. It just is moving more slowly than the faster moving stuff. So I don't get this, I give up too many things that got in my way. I gave up this idea of inside outside. What the fuck is that? Like, where do you go when you go inside? What do you think you are when you go outside? All this kind of silliness, like near and far, big and small, inside, outside. It's a bunch of shit as far as at an experiential level, at consciousness level. So I just want to understand that when I talk about the brain as being a physical organ, to me, it is also the mind, that because the brain is material, but we know matter is not material. So what's the problem here? It's a slow-moving energetic expression. That's all it is. So, okay, I sort of like put my rant on that aside. From studies, neurological studies, I guess I'd have to say that my position is kind of a psychobiological position. Psychobiological. That I've spent my life in all these traditions. I mean, all kinds of mountain meditation retreats and incredible techniques and breathing this and mantra. This has been my life. So I'm not a guy that sits with a can of tuna and says, it's a bunch of shit. But that the principle in neuroplastic change is that you reach a threshold and you maintain that threshold stimulation for a period of time, then you back off. Then you come again, then you back. Things like fire it to wire it, the brain changes what matters, that there is a neurological template that supports what I'll call the non-physical aspects, mental processes. So like your beads, that, yes, little bit. If you stretch your hamstring a little bit every day, guess what? It's going to elongate. So our brain can tolerate change with two parameters. And this is in Carhart's entropic brain model and all these things that are technical that I read a lot, that there is a range in any action that has a minimum threshold and a maximum tolerance. It's called the Arndt-Schultz law. It's graphed in the whole thing. That my approach over time, partly with aging, you get more conservative because you have to be more judicious in how you use your energy, that I'm interested in achieving the most while doing the least. That's what I want. Achieving the most while doing the least. It's not like I'm stingy or I'm lazy, but what's the point? That as soon as a process reaches threshold and then just an itty-bitty past the threshold, it's called marginal demand. This is true in flow theory and Csikszentmihalyi and all this, that you reach a threshold. Below that, there's no stimulation. At a certain point, you're at the threshold of stimulation. You go a little bit above the threshold, boom, something happens. Now, you can pass that threshold and keep going until you reach a level of maximum tolerance. And when you hit that, then the system starts to, and then you pass that, boom, it fucks up. So with psychedelics, there's the risk of matching maximum tolerance far beyond minimum threshold. So, the whole thing of, microdosing, I think microdosing is a very easy concept to understand as a brain priming process, using minimal psychoactive agency to create ongoing manageable neuroplastic change. I've written articles of this. It's in Biohackers magazine and a lot of places, that the looking at, I'll go back to that term again because it's useful to me, a psychoactive agent. Some are very quick acting, some are slow acting, some have high impact, some have low impact. Some are rather enduring, some are rather short-lived. There are lots of different psychoactive agents in life. And choosing them judiciously to match your body type, your mental acuity, the stress levels, the responsibilities that you have in life, what you're trying to achieve, that we have to know that, first of all, the extraordinary expanded mind is enabled by physical capacities, physical structures. We're made for this. We're made for it. It's not a pathology. Another saying, just because a state is uncommon doesn't make it abnormal. I'll repeat it. Just because a state is uncommon does not make it abnormal.
Yeah.
And you know what it's like, the ebb and flows. Yeah.
Totally, I get it. But and this is, I just have this feeling that I'd like to tell this story because I don't think I've ever told it, at least in a podcast to begin with.
Wow.
But it's something
Go
that.
for it.
Well, I did a bunch of things, from the psychedelics to the NLP courses. I even got educated in this energy kind of, the aura transformation thing. I did a whole bunch of stuff just to explore and whatever. And I had this adverse, I would say, a very anti-authoritarian kind of stance. I hate being told what to do. I don't trust authority figures very easy. There's many of these things.
That's why I like you. That's why I like you. Okay. All right.
There's a little bit of a theme going on there, and that of course has been a conversation, because I do feel like, to a degree, I've always had a conversation with God. It's been either you bastard there in the sky, or then please, the begging, praising, all that kind of stuff, or then a more stable sort of connection thing or whatever. But I've never really liked the idea of a personalized God, because that's the ultimate Orwellian, I suppose, thing, and we all know who we are. We're not saints on the inside, and not always even in our deeds. But the long and the short of it is that I went on this meditation course with, this is in 2014 or something like that. It's by this very far out guy called Drunvalo Melchizedek, and he wrote these books called The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life and this kind of thing, and they're about as out there as it gets. And essentially, there was this one lady who does a course by that guy in Helsinki, and opening of the illuminated heart or something like that. And it teaches you this meditation technique and everything. And I'm not sure if I grasped it entirely, if it was my thing, but it certainly was helpful, and it was an opening experience. But at that time, I just met my then-to-be wife. And I had this intuition that it would be important for her to go and do it, because somehow I felt like this is going to be more for her than it is for me. And a little bit after that course, we moved to London. And it was a really, really miserable time. We had no money whatsoever. Doors weren't opening here in Finland, hence why we left. And it wasn't opening in London either. We were living in this bike shed with mold, and it was fucking misery to the teeth. And essentially,
Ouch.
by this time, all of a sudden, her meditations, after this course, her meditations really opened up. And they became these sort of epic Lord of the Rings style things, where she would just come out of it and tell me a whole epic movie of what just had happened with all the things that she got connected and the worlds that she inhabited. And she came out of one of these meditations and started Googling, who is Lakshmi? And she didn't know that at all, but she was training at a gym. She was training at a gym, and there was an Indian lady there, and she had told her this story that, I just Googled Lakshmi and this and thing, and her eyes went wide open. It's like, do you not know what, and this kind of thing. And she connected to these worlds, and she advised me how to do a couple of artworks. One was of Lakshmi, and one was of Ganesh, and what these inhabiting worlds were. And then, long and the short of it, again, in 2020 early, COVID hits, and we realized that London is becoming even a worse shithole than it is, that we need to get the hell out of there as soon as possible. And we planned our escape, then we managed to come back to Finland. And my wife didn't tell me this at all, but in her meditations, she started to then, guided by Lakshmi, to connect to Krishna, because Krishna is Lakshmi's husband. And that's where the root kind of cause goes. And she had done this sort of promise that when we were coming out of London under the pandemic or whatever, that if this goes well and we get to come home, she starts to go to the temple and connect more to this tradition and everything. And before we actually came here, we watched the documentary on Netflix. I don't know if you've seen it, called Wild Country, Wild Country or something like that, which is the Osho.
That's all right. Listen, that's my era. I can tell you mucho about many wild country.
Sure. Let me just.
scenarios.
I'm almost at the end of the story. So essentially, how I got connected to this. How I got connected to this whole story is that all of a sudden she starts going to the temple and just said, I'm connected to this thing, I want to go to the temple and everything. And we just watched the disaster that was the Osho sort of cult. And I'm not faulting Osho for all of it, but at all. I think he was a brilliant, brilliant man. But all the social things that happened around it, let's say, were quite disastrous.
Yeah.
So my initial thought is like...
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, so she's not, which fucking cult has she now joined, and whose dick is being sucked behind the doors and whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm just assuming, okay, this is another ordeal that I now have to deal with. So I start going to the temple and connect, just initially to go and see if she was safe and what's going on in this place, and because I just associated with potentially something harmless and people giving cookies and this kind of thing. And then I started chanting and singing with them. And doing the kind of kirtan and the service or whatever. And then I remember this distinct moment when all of a sudden normal consciousness went away, and I understood what the Indian magic carpet ride is, because all of a sudden I felt like I was on a floating carpet in this eternal space singing with these people, and the thing of what they actually do became visible to me. And then I started hanging out with the monks more, realized that these people are exactly what they say on the tin of what it is. There was no subtext. There was no, dirt underneath the carpet to this degree that I would have had any concern. And it felt like this very wholesome experience. And this, little bit by little bit, has now gradually led me to balance at least my perspective a little bit of what is at best the personal God concept, if not reality, as well as the cosmos and the impersonal, the Vishnu type situation. And I think this has been most helpful in healing my relationships, I suppose, to myself, as well as to hanging out with other men, to have this kind of idea of the personalized God, despite knowing all my flaws and dirtiness or whatever, not being only a judgmental force. And this has been as psychedelic of an experience as anything before this. And it's thousands and thousands of years old. It's not something that requires any other technology but your own bravery, which I think is the psychedelic hero's journey to a degree. So, but I think all of these are good. No matter how you do the journey is going to be valuable, just as long as you actually do the journey and you dare go where many others don't.
Yes. Is my response. Yes, and this is the beauty. I have a question, a technical question. On your screen, am I in focus? You and your art. Part of what I enjoy your art, what I've seen of it, and there's a lot more of it than what I've seen. I've only ever seen it indirectly, on computer screens. Part of, to me, you're like, there's something, even though it's very different, Klimt to me, is one of my very favorite artists, visual artists of all time. And the use of colors and geometry, and then when I look at your art, it's kind of Klimt and Jackson Pollock or something like that. I was immediately drawn to the colors, the richness of the colors, the colors to the point of textured colors, and the kind of surprise that comes from it. It's a little bit like humor. It's a violation of expectation that draws my attention. Like that Tesla in the snow. I'd never own a Tesla anyway, especially in the snow. But that remarkable Tesla expression that you had done. And then now your senses series, the models where there's a human figure, usually a beautiful human figure, embedded and juxtaposed with, we talked a little bit about, if I can pronounce his name, Kai Gojang, the fireworks artist.
Oh yeah.
And I'm amazed by his, so much of his work, because he does realism and, stuffed animals and everything. But one of the things that captivated me by one of his projects where he was using a barge and daytime, you're going out of focus again, by the way. So I don't know.
Don't worry about the technology. Just
cool.
Let's just
keep cool. At it. Anyway, that fireworks, nighttime, colors in the sky, the whole thing, which is, I think, a simulation of what goes on inside the head that we like. But that when he used daytime and he was shooting up these biodegradable organic dyes in the daytime, so you have these, he was making cloud formations and then would shoot light fireworks into it. The transitory nature of it was captivating. The way that he lays out massive canvases and it's all these explosives and then covers it with cardboard and bricks and then to see on canvas an imprint of a natural process. When I look at your art, to me, although it's natural because it's coming from you, but I'm very much drawn to, and I'll use these words, they're kind of dumb, to the structured and the chaos, the chaotic mixture of expression in relation to certain forms, like that Tesla. The Tesla is a thing. And what you did on the Tesla is very not aerodynamic. So what about because we're talking about ordinary mind, extraordinary mind, kind of we're talking about order and chaos, that kind of thing. When I'm attracted to your art because it seems to beckon to me to let go of anticipated structure and go with where this takes me. So I'm wondering about you. When you do it, how much is structural and how much is abstract? What does that mean to you? Who was it? Kandinsky or something? That the form was getting in the way of his expression.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you how I landed with it and how it developed.
Yes, please.
Because there's a couple of things. Well, first of all, I was a filmmaker before I was a contemporary artist, and the way that I landed being a contemporary artist was a process that I didn't see that anyone else was doing, and I think still in its whole spectrum, I don't think anyone else is doing, which is that I understood. Okay. When I was a kid, I went to drawing class, and we always did watercolors, and I hated them because it's watery and shitty, and you can't do lines, and I wasn't really particularly drawn to it. And I had a teacher who was sort of came to me like this, and I was probably thinking of a drum beat or something like that, and he said, "Well, you obviously don't have any talent in painting whatsoever." And I just had this then circus loop going like this for the longest period. And then I saw this one guy called Richard Bandler, who's the co-founder of NLP, where he took a bunch of people who had this similar kind of limiting belief and put them on a stage and put them in a trance and gave them some acrylics and some canvas and put them in a trance and then walked them up from it. And they weren't like Picasso's or anything, but they were decent paintings. And you could see that these people's reality shifted from this negative belief to reality. And at that moment in time, I realized that, holy shit, this is what happened to me as well, despite me playing multiple instruments, directing, editing, lighting, acting, all of these kinds of things that I did creatively. But I did also realize that I did not know how to paint because I hadn't done that at all, and I had no education in it. But what if I started body painting on, let's say, a beautiful woman? I could direct her, I could light her, her figure would actually offer me the correct proportions of the body, and I could tell these stories by playing with paint. Yeah. All of these things. I went to Lakeside to photograph some natural elements. Then we did the body painting process with the first model, and then I painted and just played with paint. I did macro photography, trying to find shapes and sizes that would somehow intermingle with this. And then with Photoshop, I was able to repaint those paintings to have figures and then layer it all together. But what I suppose interestingly started happening is, because I had that background in understanding NLP, is that I realized that I could do these processes whilst we are doing the body painting. So I could ask them and inquire about their lives. Is there something that is holding you back? Is there something that you might want to reconfigure about your vision, where you're going as a human being, and try to facilitate these peak experiences of when something was happening inside of them internally, and they would express it somehow. I would capture that and then try to use paint to enhance those somehow. And then there's another factor, which is that I was introduced right after university to audiobooks, and one of the people that I found was Ken Wilber, the founder of Integral Theory. And I started listening to his ideas on the world or the story of creation or whatever it is. I tried to marry all of that together by design, that there would be something that is deeply personal about myself, as well as the collaborator, as well as the expression, and then some philosophy or some connection, and so that there would be a little bit of something for anyone coming at them from any angle. And I suppose this exactly what you're trying to say is that there's the chaos and the order, which is our natural world. I mean, if anyone that is dear to us starts to go too much into chaos, we try to rein them in. It's naturally natural and innate in us. Unfortunately, we're not as good as a society, and not necessarily in our skill set, when someone becomes a little too orderly either, to kind of shake them out of that thing. But those need to be in balance. And unless if they're present, it just doesn't feel like the artwork is ready.
Do you know when a piece of art is finished?
Yeah, it's kind of like sex, you know.
Is it that obvious?
I think it was Picasso who said that. It might have been Picasso,
Well,
but
I think.
really, yeah, it is
I
pretty
mean,
much.
here we are as men. I don't think we would. This would not play that well with any woman that I know. But okay, between us, cool. Okay, I've been told.
No, but
by
it's
some people,
even for women, it's a dance. It's a dance where even if the guy came early or whatever,
Now you're trying to be
still
an
kind of know
apologist.
that it's.
No. You know, you backed into the ditch, dude. I'm sorry. Call the wrecking truck. Okay, about VESA and art. I've been told by some, I never thought of it this way, but this person said that it's a new art form, that it's internal visual, and I do sound light integration, so that it's an internal art form. It's a new art form. I don't know if it's new, but that's why I was saying about Kai Guangzhong. I don't know Chinese names very well. Kai, the fireworks guy, and his powder in the day, that the way that musical sound before there was recording was just in the moment, and then it was gone. That with the VESA, and this is, because I've done meditation techniques for long, and I can. This is not a claim, but it's just a fact that I can lay back and relax, keep letting go, and then I start to get all the light play and colors and geometry and so on. It's like, okay, good, but not as dynamic as with the VESA. Many people say that I would say, I know when you take a good hit, whether it's ayahuasca these days or DMT or like old school mushrooms or whatever, that well, the VESA does that, like click, boom. And part of what I love about it is that it's transitory, that it's there for the moment. Okay, you can put it on and turn it on and repeat it, but that because it's not hanging on the wall, that it is what it is when it happens, and then it's gone. I love the way it kind of, for me, and others say this too, it kind of tricks you into the present. This is also neurologically true. I can talk about bottom-up signaling, top-down. I won't go into the technicality of it. But and I'm thinking again about Kai, the fireworks guy, and fireworks themselves. They just happen, and then they're gone. Now, these days, everybody's got their phone up, and you kind of look at it again. But what about your sense of art in relation to permanence and impermanence? When you have like classically a 15th century sculpture with marble, I mean, we can't do that now with 3D printing. They could do it with a hammer and a chisel. How they got those forms, I don't know. But what about in your personal art, and then maybe art in general? What about permanence and impermanence? What about the thing that it's there and it's always there, as opposed to it's here but it's gone?
Ultimately, it'll be gone, because this world's going to be gone. The sun's going to dim out, but maybe we've gone elsewhere, whatever. But I don't worry about those things fundamentally so much anymore, simply because I just don't have that much of an attachment to it, even though I do take it very seriously. But let's say how I mitigate it is that I do have physical reproductions of those works. But what is very interesting about the time where we're in, and why, despite the horrible reputation that NFTs now have, I still very much believe in the technology and think that it's very important, because we haven't had digital ownership rights at all before the invention of Bitcoin. And then now all of a sudden we have we can have digital land ownership. We can, whether it's a drum beat, you can make that into an ownable experience, or ticketing, whatever. All of these things are now making sure that as long as the electricity grid of the world is on, which,
That's the
you know,
point.
if it doesn't, if it isn't anymore, then we have bigger problems. Then all of a sudden, it's these network of computers that are maintaining the information everywhere. That it's probably, if you compare to the survival rate of just a oil painting, to that it's actually multiplied across a vast network across the world is one thing. But of course, if you do both simultaneously, you'll have a better chance of that having an impact on the culture. But I'm more worried about, on a fundamental level of, well, let's say Dali is, to me, the first metaverse. Because when I saw his paintings, I got immersed into a world and became aware of something inside of me that then I couldn't switch off anymore. It was like the genie out of the bottle type situation. So if I'm able to make art that would somehow have that effect on larger and larger, basically to scale that effect, if I'm deserving with my art for it to be able to go to many downloads in people as well as computers, the better chance it will have that it'll have this similar effect. Like, for example, now there would be a Monet show that is digitized and made into a digital art museum that is blown all across the sort of interior of the museum. But now increasingly we have these experiences, like one of the things that we did with this metaverse world called Superworld. It's an augmented reality platform, but they did this experimental thing with me, because I got to see and understand. I went there on location myself personally to see the Luxor Temple in Egypt, but it was John Anthony West kindly opened up the concept when we met, and I collaborated with his daughter, blah blah blah. But essentially he told me that it's built into the shape of man, the whole temple, and it tells the story of how a pharaoh goes from birth to transcendence in a good way. And if the pharaoh lives their lives well, this being male or female, doesn't matter, then the society around him or her will be cohesively together. So the temple itself tells the story of life and how to live it well, and has the chakra points hidden inside of it, and all these kinds of rituals that were made in that temple. And I just thought, this is mind-boggling that I've only been given this idea of society being something that goes from, cavemen to basically now modern computers, and there's nothing in between.
Sure.
And it's been nothing but progress ever since. And all of a sudden I'm here at this precipice understanding that thousands and thousands of years ago, we already built things that we don't have lost the consciousness to do now, and we haven't done anything even remotely like it for centuries. So we can take something that is the best from the past, and we animated it into virtual reality, and then made it my personal art gallery, which is the scene and setting in which I would hope that people go to experience the context of the whole of the about 500 artworks that I've done during my career thus far. And then that tells the bigger story. And what if now we're able to bring in an AI curator who would be there to greet you 24/7 and tell you the whole story of whether it's that artwork or the particular location or what is possible, how to get inspired by that, and have a conversation with you. So now all of a sudden the technology assistance that we can have in order to reach people, and I can send this with a click of a button to anyone with internet access or a laptop or a mobile phone. So that is quite magical in terms of what is possible. But now simultaneously we also have this very repressive, puritanical, cultural controlling mechanism that is also coming at play at the same time, which is very interesting. It does feel like how you would say maybe the sequel of the psychedelic renaissance from the 60s. This is another moment where we have these really big explosion of possibility and consciousness, but at the same time then from a different angle a very repressive kind of cultural aspect coming into play from it. So yeah, maybe you can diffuse from that very easily what at least my stance is for it. But those I find interesting. But it happens first and foremost in a connection between the art and the conscious and subconscious of the person who is experiencing it, and their capacity to take it in. I mean, you obviously have this direct line into it, and you just were influenced because you don't have these blockages to it. But like I said at the beginning, it's increasingly rare that someone would have this experience to it. And I feel almost invisible at times, and kind of at despair, because I see that people just don't, they can't access. It's just like this. And it's so weird.
Do you think it's a stimulation saturation at this point, that if you never heard music and a bar, or I guess a storyteller, whatever they're called, some minstrel comes to your village and plays, it's remarkable. But if you've got speakers playing all day from your MP3 and your phone and whatever, if somebody comes, it's like So
I get what you're saying, but I don't think it covers it.
Contract. Well, I don't. The truth is, I don't know. I don't monitor culture very much now, compared to earlier times. I don't really have a big appetite to travel, for example. I'm not. I've never really been a social guy. I'm not antisocial. Just I'm more introverted because I don't go to bars and nightclubs because I don't drink, or it's like, what do I do? So what's important? What is meaningful? When I saw your art, it felt meaningful to me. It triggered something. I think what I recall is kind of the dynamic, dramatic richness of your color palette, combined with a lot of counter-structural, abstracted, kind of exploding angles. I think it's, it felt like a juxtaposition, but it felt gorgeous. It was a gorgeous dichotomy for me.
I'm so happy you have that.
Yeah, well, me too. I get to experience it. You get to make it. I get to experience it. So, because when I look at with the visor, all of the things that you see are quite predictable in terms of neurology, but it doesn't take away the splendor of the impact that the colors, our internal colors are. Like the richness of your colors point or approximate in that direction. There's something about the internal cortex stimulation where, like the emerald green was never that emeraldy than that, and that's in your head, eyes closed. And then with the color things, that's the phosphenic, and then the entopic, and you get all of these geometrics, Kluver's form constants, the grids, the funnels, the spirals, the webs, all these things that are being created internally just by different frequencies of stimulation. Like, people think, you must have all these colored LEDs. No, there's no color in the LED. The LEDs are just white. And so where does all this color come from? Then you get that layer of geometrics, and at first they seem kind of two-dimensional, and then if you really let go for the ride, you kind of get used to it. You know how to dance with it or be danced, and then boom, you get dimensionality where it becomes more three-dimensional. It's like when you're looking at the stars and there they are, then you realize that it's three-dimensional and your head goes kaboom, that has dimension. It's like that internal dimensionality. And then this incredible thing, at that point they're called adetics, where you, in the midst of all of this very transitory process, nothing stays for very long, whatever that means, long, that then scenes, faces, landscapes, all these things start to happen, and that's very attractive to me, the dynamic, transitory nature of it, and knowing that, like, music, I'll use that because I use sound light integration, and they're completely integrated. They're not just some Celtic harp or something. That music is not the sound that you hear. Right now, we have these things on. It's just our eardrums vibrating to voice. Music is not the sound you hear. The brain goes through this translational, transformative process where it's transformed into experience. That it's just a bunch of, pulses and vibrating material. It's just, that's all it is at one level. Yet our brain does something with it. Our brain knows how to make it. Our brain loves to do it. So it's like, wow, what I'm getting turned on to. Maybe why I like your stuff is because of a lifelong of meditation, a bunch of psychedelics, and maybe now years of this kind of stimulation where the impact, like when I look at your art, there's a difference between looking and seeing. I started off but it's the difference between listening and hearing. It's the difference between looking and seeing. That maybe because I'm used to seeing this, because it happens, when I was exposed to your art, what it is there translated into an experience. It was a felt state. It wasn't something that I was looking at. It's a psychoactive agent.
Yeah, and potentially, but it sounds, it's so similar to what you've been achieving, is that you became an artist via technology from the same point of consciousness, as in that what you wanted to achieve with NeuroVizr, which is in one way give people more control over their own exploration of consciousness and expanding their worldview, is the very same purpose of what I have. But can I ask, actually quite selfishly, about NeuroVizr in a way, because I've always, and it runs in my family as well, whatever, ADD, and trouble sleeping. How can you manage to have a program inside of this device that helps you sleep? What needs to happen in order for that to be helpful for someone?
Okay. It is a fortuitous accident. I design, I call it brain engagement because it is so different from brain entrainment. People are used to blinkety blink, is that alpha, is that theta, that kind of thing. It has only historical association. Brain engagement is a process that I designed, built on a combination of neuroplastic methodology, information theory, cybernetics, complex adaptive systems. It is a compositional process, much like a movie script or maybe a symphony, that there are all of these factors. There's attraction, there's destabilization, there's conflict in the signaling, because those things work to enable realistic incremental neuroplastic change. Okay, so that's my design principle. And then I started to get feedback more and more and more and more. God, this is like, I'm really sleeping better. And I think, well, what session are you using? And it was like all kinds of different sessions. It was weird. And so it has forced me into developing a theory in 2 steps, and I'll make it short. That we naturally, in our circadian rhythm, have 4 different types, simply put, 4 different types of consciousness states. Biologically, we have to have them or we get sick. You can say there's waking and sleeping. In the sleeping category, you have this subset called sleeping dreams. In the waking category, you have a subset called waking dreams. But our culture doesn't appreciate them. They're the relation to what we call the hypnagogic and hypnopompic state. They're these bardos, the transitional states, where the mind is more open. And there's like a tantra from like 1,000 years ago that says the whole thing. They call it the 4th state. I did maybe at where we met, actually in Helsinki, I did the presentation of the forgotten 4th state of consciousness. That you can fuck up any human or animal by disrupting chronically their circadian cycle. You can make them sick. You can even kill them. So biologically, every 24 hours, being a terrestrial solar cycle, we go through a series of mandatory neurological changes. We do. And if you take away any one of those, the person becomes out of harmony and becomes ill, maybe even severely ill. I think we, because of the culture, because of urban modern lifestyle, because of our praise of the ordinary rational mind, the scientific revolution, the age of reason, the extraordinary mind became very suspicious, even considered evil. And you were, mystics and all, like, no. And now materialistic science. This is the short statement. We don't spend enough time in the fourth state of consciousness. I'll call it a fourth state deficiency syndrome. We don't allow ourselves deep conscious relaxation while in the waking state. How much of the day do any of us spend in deep conscious relaxation? Talk about Salvador Dali, right? He had a technique. He used a bunch of keys where he would rest and his hand would relax, the keys would drop on the floor, and he would awaken to a consciousness of what his mind was doing. It was one of the primary influences in his surrealism, because the hypnagogic state has this surreal, transitory, morphing kind of quality. So I believe that with the VESA, that it creates an effortless state shift, a generic shift that is similar to the hypnagogic, hypnopompic state. Parahypnagogia is when you learn to do it in the daytime, where you relax. And the best time is the mid-afternoon, where the circadian cycle energy drops around 3, the siesta time. Your body is going. At that point, if you practice, as I do, frankly, breathing, relaxing, somatic body scan, go deeper, and resist the slide. Oh, I lost you again. Boom. Talk about evolving technology. When the cars all had carburetors and you're trying to start, and if you pumped it too many times, you would flood the carburetor. So you had to wait for the fuel to dissipate. So to show you, my aunt, who didn't know anything, is in the driver's seat. I'm standing looking in the window, right, of this old, like a 52 Ford or something. And she's like, rah, 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 rah. And my grandmother, right, she said, Bernadette was the woman's name. She said, Bern, turn it off and let it warm up for a while. She conflated these two things where, because in the coal you had to you turn it on and you let it run for a while to warm up, then you could drive. But then if you flooded the carburetor, you had to turn it off and let the fuel dissipate. So, it stuck in my mind as we evolve. I mean, what you just turn on the mic is the joke where the person says, I don't know, it's not, my computer's not working. Is it plugged in? Oh, no. So my mic isn't working. Is it turned on? So just turn it off and let it warm up for a while.
But that's what you said at the beginning when we started talking, is that very, as true as anything is true, is that be humble or be humbled by life. It's that no matter how brilliant I might feel in one moment that I've managed something or whatever it is, the next moment my pants are full of tomato sauce and I trip over myself, making a total clown. But that's sort of the but this is and it goes maybe back to the theme of being brave as well, because I don't like looking a fool any more than anyone else does, but I'm prepared to do it if there is something if there's a pot at the end of the rainbow of it, like asking stupid questions and looking an idiot, but actually getting a good answer and then being the wiser for it, I think that is again a part of the hero's quest, because we're just born maybe with some instinct and otherwise completely dumb. And as we progress, hopefully we have increments of wisdom towards it. But some part of whatever wisdom I might have been able to accrue is that whole thing of just how dumb I'll keep being as I as I progress, and how to maybe emotionally take other people's trials and tribulations with their kind of journey into better consideration than before. Maybe there's something in that.
Well, Dalai Lama, often quoted, "My religion is kindness." Like, it's kind of a matured arrival point, I think. So what? When it comes to consciousness, maybe you've already mentioned it. What have you grown to trust when it comes to encountering life and when it's a challenge? Like what do you trust? In the past, like trust your doctor, or you trust or Tylenol. Like what do you trust? Okay, I'll say it a little different. The same question remains. In the past, because I worked in sports medicine as well, I would be asked the question, what's the best kind of exercise? And I said, well, that's easy. They said, no, it's not easy at all. There are all these kinds. There's CrossFit, there's aerobics, there's power. What's the best kind of exercise? I said, it's easy. They said, give me a break. Just tell me. I said, okay. The best kind of exercise is the one you're going to do. All the rest is theory. So for you, it's not like what do you trust at some theoretical level or, intellectual level or something. What do you actually do that shows what you actually, maybe the word is not trust, but I'll use that word trust. For some people, it's 3 martinis. That's what I do. Apparently, I trust that it's going to be as effective as, I'm going to go in the corner and I'm going to meditate. Apparently not. Okay. So what do you do? What do you trust?
I'll try to decipher a couple of things that pop into my mind, and in saying those, I hope I don't jinx it. but essentially,
you're superstitious on top of it, huh?
A little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's say I went on this course, this fascinating gentleman called Dr. John DeMartini, and I went through his breakthrough experience in London. This is in 2016, and essentially he said that what you can pretty much trust is that as you go along with life, that there's always an element of support and always an element of challenge that will appear, and if those are in optimal kind of flow, then that means that you're just in this good flow of life, I suppose. But if you have too much challenge, you burn out, and if you have too much support, you get bored. And many people, I suppose, like myself included, wanted to achieve some sort of a utopia, thinking that it'll be all but support and then everything should be good, or it's either whatever variation from that. And then now I'm trusting the fact that every day, some days there's more support than challenge, and some days there's more challenge than support. But it's been pretty optimal, bringing me to my limit often. But that's something that I trust that will keep appearing over the course of my
10 words or
relationship.
less. 10 words or less. What is it that you trust? You gave me this preamble. So what do you trust?
Well, now my wife is one, but also the thing that I wrestle with now to trust is God.
Yes. What's that?
God.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
It's that higher intelligence, something that, let's say if I look at my dog, or something like that, and it's doing its twirls and being all cute or whatever it is. From the perspective of other dimensions or higher consciousness, or potentially a personified being that has more of a pulse on this whole thing, that it has ultimately my back, however you want to formulate that, and having that, whether that's a trustworthy thing or not, is the thing that I wrestle with. And to be very short and punctual to your question, what do I trust? It's tough to say. I don't know if I, in that sense, trust anything.
Because I have an idea. I think it's maybe partly true at least, is that a person cannot relax unless they have trust. That without trust, relaxation, deep conscious relaxation, is impossible, because there's always some level of vigilance against danger, that you don't trust safety. That I think safety and trust come, like when you lock the door at night and you trust that nobody bad can come into your place and hurt you. That's why you can rest at ease. And at an existential level, I think, like I experienced in my life with all my spiritual practices, let alone trying to survive, on a material level, I got to a point where I would think it's fair to say that I experienced existential fatigue. That I was exhausted by the continuous, seemingly unending task of trying to manipulate my experience to be the way I wanted it to be. It was an unending, impossible task. Even if I could get my experience to be the way I wanted it to be, then I had to work to try to keep it that way. And so that was, for me, a spiritual crisis, kind of. And I sought out a teacher to help me with that, and I found one, and I got into this, Tibetan non-dual practice called Dzogchen, and I'll skip the detail. But a teaching story, 1972, I'm in northern India in an ashram, and I heard this teaching story. They use a lot of, storytelling analogies, and here it is in short. Person's walking around barefoot, and it hurts all the time, depending on whether it's a smooth surface, a hot surface, or a jagged one, or cold. And the realization is that to solve the problem, that I'll say it's a he, could be a woman, that he had to put carpet over the whole world, so wherever he walked, it would be comfortable. And then you know how the stories go. So then this teacher comes along and says, "Well, that might be possible. It's highly unlikely that you can make everything to be soft everywhere. How about if you consider putting on a pair of sandals, where you don't try to manipulate the world to be the way you want it to be, that you change something in your perspective, so now wherever you walk, it's going to feel comfortable." So for me, this goes right into the VESA experience, actually, is a level of trust that my change in expectation of what it is that I really want is more effective than trying to change my experience to be the way I want it to be. That I'm not always in the manipulation mode. And as I say, even if you can manipulate it to be the way you want it to be, then you've got to work at keeping it there, because shit keeps on changing. So, that perspective, there's a prayer that my Tibetan teacher gave me. It's one of the prayers that you say that are supportive. And translated from Tibetan to English, I have no idea if they nailed the translation or not, but a line has always stood out to me. Arguably, this is from the non-dual tradition, which is, its own way of working. That, if I can remember, I give up conceptualization with the abandon of a madman. I give up conceptualization with the abandon of a madman. Only a madman would give up trying to conceptualize and manipulate experience all the time. Like, are you mad? They would say, and the answer is, I don't know, but I trust this more than all the ways that I've been trying to manipulate. A lot of them haven't worked. Some of them work. But my problem is I have an honest core of existential fatigue. I'm just too fucking tired of trying to get things to be the way I want. So I've leaned towards that. You know, have I mastered it? Don't be stupid. Of course I haven't. But so the idea is that the primary way that I approach is like that. I trust that.
So
And-
like ultimate surrender, I suppose. I mean, when I was hanging out with one of the monks in the temple, he's been there now 40 years. He's hasn't
Yeah.
handled money in 40 years. He doesn't own anything. He
Yeah.
has his robe, and he said that, well,
Yeah.
everything depends on your complete surrender. And I go, yeah, I've managed some parts of it. I don't try to maniacally control the world. I don't even want to dominate it, because that seems like a really shitty job. I couldn't
Yeah.
do it, and people would be very upset if I tried. So to that degree, if I follow my own excitement and surrender to some part of that, but even that I have to mitigate, because sometimes something that excites me might have implications to other people that does something to the superstructure outside of
Yeah.
my own thing. So it's a constant navigation of things, but surrender is certainly important in it. If NeuroVizr would help me in that and get better sleep and have more relaxing, trusting things in the process, but it is difficult, because everything is in constant flux here, and this
Yeah.
whole thing of me being able to go to sleep tonight and know that there's no one coming in through the door might not actually be the reality of the situation, let's say in a year. Who the hell knows?
Yeah.
It depends on
Well,
how volatile
okay, I'm gonna-
everything gets, and it's
So I'm gonna flip from that sort of non-dual, which exists both in Buddhism and also in Hinduism. There's there's Mahamudra, and there's Dzogchen and the Tibetan, and then there's the non-dual Kashmiri non-dual Shaivism. There are not that many actual traditions, but I'll shift from that thing to the Taoist view, because I also practiced under a teacher for quite a long while. And they like the Buddhists talk about impermanence quite a lot, which is cool. They say one of the main sources of suffering is to mistake the impermanent as being permanent. Okay. Yeah. Then from the Taoist point of view, like the I Ching, the Taoists are all about the dynamics of change. That's, if there's any one word for Taoism, it's change. The I Ching is the Ching, right? It's the classic of change. That's the name of the whole damn thing. The I Ching is classic of change. And they look at we talked about our almost NFT based on that principle, if you recall, the I Ching dynamic and the trigram things, hexagrams. So I think a mistake, like I'm not a real big fan of monks. I've known too many assholes. But so just because you're a monk to me doesn't give you the credit. There are a lot of escapists, there are a lot of dickheads, there are a lot of wonderful saints as well. But just being a monk, I don't really groove with it that much. Personally, I respect if respect is earned. I'm in Thailand; it's a whole thing here. But the mistake of surrender is you don't do shit. You know that the monks work with renunciation. If there's tough stuff, you just avoid it. Okay, then there's the school of purification. When you bump into tough stuff, you give the antidote to it. So if you're a greedy bastard, you become generous. So you can be renunciate, or you can go into the purification mode. Then the next one is the transformation mode. That's the tantric processes, where you transform what it is into its virtuous aspect. So you don't antidote. And then the other one is self-liberation. Not that you liberate yourself, but every experience has its ability to come, stay, and go, and that you stay in that kind of thing. So I think the mistaken idea of surrender is that you don't do shit. And in my point of view, that's not appropriate. It's not accurate. Surrender, to me, like in Taoism, there's the doing, the not doing. There's like, well, there's something in the middle. They say like non-doing. I don't know what to call it. Wu Wei, or depending on the language you use. So in Dzogchen, I don't know. I'm talking about this, but there's a saying, which is massively important, but you can kind of miss it. It's called just as it is. That when something is happening, they say it's like a snake can tie itself into a knot and untie itself. You don't have to untie the knot in the snake.
Well,
so
let me just
this idea of surrender, I think being comfortable, hang on, pardon me. I bet you have to surrender to your art, to the experience of creation. I bet that when you start to manipulate it, it doesn't feel right, and that when you let the art piece make itself, that it's like there's the juice. And whether you call that, a download, I hate the word, whether you call it grace or blessing, whether you call it, God, whether you call it intuition, whatever, that willingness to be honest in the moment just as it is, to me, is the thing that I aspire to, and I aspire to it at a level where I'm successful in increasingly trusting it. To me, people ask, like, how do you know how to make the visor do all these things? I said, well, I'm smart, I do research, but there's a kind of a magical quality. A lot of the things that I understand of how to do the compositions and all this fancy stuff, actually, I understand it comes to me while I'm doing a session. While I'm in it, boom!
Doing is so damn important, because even in shitty days when I go in to paint and think that this is definitely not going to result into anything, which happened just yesterday, and I did go in and I made it and I photographed them. Now that I looked at what I did, there was a surprising amount of good stuff that ended up being there despite me not even having the feeling for it. But I think this... What also underneath of what you were saying, because it's the same with the monks. I don't navigate with titles. Someone has a PhD, whoop-de-doo. Some of the craziest motherfuckers I've ever met have been PhDs and been what I would say are idiots. And Carl Jung famously said that intellectualism is a common cover-up for the direct experience. So whether you use your intellect or whatever tools that you have to actually explore something, and you use it with bravery, or whether you use any of these things as a cover-up and a mask for you to have whatever protection or status gains or whatever, then that's a no-go. This particular monk that I'm hanging out with, first of all, I trusted that if someone's been there dedicatedly for 40 years and done this consistently and sacrificed that much to it, that there would be something that I could learn from this person. That's a given. Not to and again, not to put on a pedestal or to below or underneath. What I intuitively got from this guy is that I was able to go to him, talk honestly about my life, and he would do the same back, and there would be a fair exchange of ideas. And I just ended up sitting with this guy time and time again in the Sunday celebration, and it keeps being fun. That's the thing. But I very much agree with what you were saying. Is it a renunciation and an escapism just totally, and something? It doesn't feel like that is the case with this guy, but I'm sure it is the case with so many, because of course this is just an innately, it's a toilet of a planet. This is with some pockets of consciousness and amazingness and magic, but for the most part, the drudgery of the every day-to-day dullness that was introduced to me as the only option when I was in school, that was the fortunate thing, that I did really have enough of a rebellious streak to not go along with the default setting that was offered, because essentially what I knew intuitively was that would be me dying whilst alive and then just waiting for the heart to stop.
Well, I think like everybody else, including me, I think you need help. I think you need help. And that is a humbling realization. And I am in the same boat that we all need help. And when it comes to, I don't see the planet as a toilet.
It is often.
Well,
Hey man,
okay.
last time I
don't
was
know.
in a Thai beach at a 5-star resort and just walked down to the beach side and saw all
Yeah.
the plastic that was floating onto the beach. I mean, it's hard
Okay.
to not see some.
All right. Okay. Well, earlier, buddy talk. The help that in spiritual practices, lots of them. We've been talking about a few of them, and putting in religion, the whole thing, without pissing on anybody's parade. Like you said earlier, everybody's got their way and they're doing their best. I think that prayer has a meaningful positive effect. I think prayer. And I had an experience that informed that. And also I'll tell you something that I heard a Tibetan monk say. He said that prayer is not what you say, it's what you feel while you're saying it. So the construct of the prayer is almost, it may not be irrelevant, but it's not so impactful. Like you with your chanting and the kirtans, that it's what you're feeling as you're doing that. It's not really that thing makes you have a feeling as much as you have a feeling while you're doing it. And I'm not sure chicken or egg in that process. So prayer, I think it's either practices or calamities that if a person gets to experience as truthfully as possible their deepest heart's desire. Like, what is it that I really want? What do there's a lot of things that I want, but this desire thing, like, where does that appetite, what's the longing? And if you go deep enough however you get there, deep enough into your heart to recognize, I really want this, that intimate proximity that is then formalized into what we'll call a prayer, I think it can move mountains. That's
Completely
what I think.
agreed. Yeah, because I suppose many people have this idea of a prayer being like a shopping wish list that you send to God or cosmos in order for them to be fulfilled. And,
it's basically
from a
bartering.
mental level, it can, and that's
It's a
not
barter.
it at all.
But listen, I'm meditating. I should get what I want. It's a barter system with some kind of unknown salesman, and that's why I said the best kind of exercise is the one you're going to do, and honesty in the present moment is the key that opens doors.
Well, I think, and I had this
In your
thought.
art, I challenge that I challenge you as an artist to make art from that point of view.
Oh,
I challenge you.
I think,
my friend.
yes, then thank you. I mean, I'm already probably a better artist because I've had this conversation with you, because somehow this is doing something and it's going to influence the course of things. And also, I want to acknowledge what you just said, because it just very much came from the heart. It's like, you need help.
and all of us do. And I think that what just happened with the previous models when we've done these collaborations, because it's a very intimate setting. I mean, they're questioning what the hell is going on here. All of a sudden, there's just this photographer. I'm in his studio. I'm nude, and we're expressing things and exploring internal, external, all of this. Can I trust this process or whatever? And they're sharing incredibly intimate things. Like, for example, one in the previous setting we had is that we were able to get connected to this lady's dead grandmother, who was a very, very influential character. And in this meditation, we brought her to sit with us, and them having a mental or, dimensional conversation. And she was moved to tears and was empowered by this to express new things and whatever. And there could be a high and mighty position where I could start to feel like, oh, I'm so helping these people or whatever it is. And for a moment, you might even get an enjoyment that you've sparked such a thing. But then if I, for more than a minute, forget that I need these things just as much as I'm lacking, sometimes feeling there's not enough support, and certainly the Medici that I would need monetarily to support what it is that I do hasn't appeared yet. So there's quite a few different things.
Now that's funny. In a cruel way. Yeah.
Yes. So, but that's the thing, is that because I am able to help others, I'm also able to ask for help. And the humility of that process is that it's just recognizing from which I can actually authentically get that. And that'll carry on, if we are to be alive till the last breath, that'll carry on up until then.
Well, that the potential for stripped down humility in prayer without debasing yourself, which I'm just a piece of shit. No, that the getting close to honesty is, a fundamental psychoactive agent. That perspective, that posture triggers things. Like right now with this time together, we're both pretty cash, you could say. That, maybe people are going to actually listen to this thing. Well, okay. But that's the risk of honesty. And knowing that, I do my best to tell you what I think is true, knowing that I don't know if it's true, but I can tell you honestly that I experience it as being true. I could be totally wrong. So, that kind of willingness to be in the present moment and own what you're experiencing. It's not easy when it's hard, because I was such an arrogant guy that I thought that it shouldn't, even though the first divorce just about took my skin off. I think I'm not trying to debase myself by saying I'm arrogant, but I just note that arrogance really gets in the way of a lot of beauty.
Yeah, well, I think arrogance, ultimately, it's a protection device.
Yeah, sure.
And it's that if you've lost and severed different kinds of connections and trust and whatever, then I certainly had the same, that I tried to protect myself and overcorrect on some things. And the actual, whatever humility or gratitude has done, it's allowed me to connect to other people, therefore making many of those things that I thought that I wanted or needed absolutely unnecessary. And it's happened enough times for me to have taught my neurology, and sort of enough experiences are there in order for me to be mostly able to pursue that now, as opposed to what I tried to pursue before, and nearly killing myself with alcohol or just having disastrous relationships or whatever. I think, fortunately, if you do push the pedal to the metal enough times, then you do hit the genuine walls enough in order to know where not to go, and some of those solutions will present themselves that are the real thing.
Yeah, so what just comes to my mind is that being an arrogant traditionalist, I was not in, again, I go back to the Catholicism, this right and wrong attitude, this us and them attitude, which I think is very dangerous. The VESA, okay, because I'm a traditional meditator guy. In every way you might imagine that, more or less throughout my life. Different traditions, but same sincere effort. So the idea that the VESA could help a person, before I would have had resistance to that. It's like, you're I was going to say it's like a bad word, but you should do the real thing, like man up. And the same thing, my early, this idea that we all need help. And according to our circumstance, our age, our culture, our health, all these things, we need help. And that's why I feel really it's like, wow, for people that have addiction problems, whether they're inclined genetically or whether it's circumstantial, these people hurt, and they're trying to not hurt. And unfortunately, what they're doing is hurting them even more, but they didn't know that because it felt good. So, to me, getting close to honesty, getting close to the moment, why I'm doing the NeuroVizr, the VESA we call it now, is because it helps. And that's great. And for me, if we didn't have artists doing art, there would be a huge gap in the experience of being a human. I think my favorite art form, and I have some reproductions. I brought images, and I have some Thai artists here, and they make painted images. I love Australian Aboriginal art. I just love it. It connects to me. Boom. That urge, that need to want to make the invisible visible, to me, is what you're doing. And even to me with the VESA, I'm trying to make, that you can finally see the music that you love, that you can turn on your brain, mind in such a way that you get to experience gorgeous relief. Because we all need help. And
yeah, well, and
I honor and respect what you do. I honor and respect what you do. I happen to be moved by it, which is like a plus, but if we're going to be here, let's try to do something helpful.
Yeah,
and you may not think you're helping people, but you are. Yeah.
Very much looking forward to us figuring out what the method of our collaboration will be, and kind of we've had these private conversations already and how we could maybe evolve from it. The I Ching thing still, hopefully also that at some point.
We'll see.
Yeah, let's see. First apply oxygen mask to self in an airplane is just the situation that really got in the way of that for now, for a bit. But yeah, it's super resonant to have this conversation with you.
We had a talk with your wife involved, and I think she I mean, she's the jewel here, right? Is my indirect experience of her. That when I said, and she let's melt away the concept of inside outside. Let's just forget about that. Yeah, my VESA is an inside thing. Your art is an outside thing. That's a mistaken perspective. Let's say, forget that. And as soon as we give up on that apparent dichotomy, I think things will. The art will make itself, because it wants. The urge is from the consciousness itself. I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that I don't want to think about yours being outside and my being inside. I think that's a mistake.
Yeah, I think the convergence of where it's all going is that AI tools are now, in the short term, ruining the chances of many mediocre artists, because already the process of you just being able to not have any artistic discipline at all, and just writing a bunch of text into a prompt that spits you out an image, gives you a certain sense of ownership of that image that you get to put, that has a lot of the things that you want on your wall, for example. But the next iterations of where it's going to go is that the AI interface that you're going to be interacting with is going to give you a bunch of choices that, again, depending on the amount of courage that you have to explore that 360 world of whether it's an embedded chip in your brain or
glasses I just got it.
Immerse.
I just got it, man. I just got it. What we can do. Right now, I'm quite assertively, not aggressively, but assertively working with a small team. I'm developing algorithmic processes that interface with my particular device design, which is a very complex optometric design. It's not just like sunglasses with LEDs. That the algorithmic process will be such that, I thought about this before, now it's back again, that the algorithmic process is such that you take any, we'll call it music, any soundscape, any music, and the algorithm will do what I call a delta deconstruction. It'll pull out the explicit and then calculate the implicit information that's there and use that implicit information to simultaneously create light choreography in the device. So that right now I do it all manually, but the idea is there's an input of sound. It's translated out into an output of light. That's the basic algorithm in simplicity. It can be, you do a piece of art, it's there, it's visual. We put a camera on it, the camera as the input of all the visual structure, the patterns, the geometry, the color tones, anything that's there, and algorithmically that'll be translated into an so-called internal light experience, where the flicker rates, the macro, the pulsing, all of these things, that it would be a transformation of your, I'll use the words, your outside visual art into an internal visual representation in the brain.
Sure.
There you go.
Cool.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm not sure if I'm going to add that part to the podcast itself, because I think we should keep that to ourselves before we actually get to progress with it a little
That's
bit.
cool. Up to you. Yeah.
But if,
on the other hand, fuck them.
Yeah, that as well.
Now that I think about it, fuck them.
Fuck them.
Fuck them. They can't do it. They don't even know what I'm talking about.
But hey, listen, as the day presses on for the both of us, as enjoyable as this is, and we could go on for days, and hopefully will do. Listen, man,
Okay.
I think we should wrap this up for now. And just with these
We're
words,
good.
I mean, nothing but love for what you represent,
Thank you.
who you are, and what you do, and this resonant conversation.
man.
It's a privilege to have this time with you. I do appreciate it a lot, and I hope those people who've hung out up until now and finished this conversation with us have benefited
This many
in
hours.
one. Yeah, have benefited one way or another. I do believe that they have. Otherwise, they wouldn't have hung out with us for so long. It's felt like a
Okay.
super episode. I'm very grateful.
Okay. Of course, my pleasure. What else are we going to do? It's fun. Like the best, purest kind of fun. So who's going to turn down fun? Not me, not you.
So please let people know how they can reach you. I'll add like the websites and things like that onto the show notes or whatever, but just to how people find you.
Okay, there's a website called NeuroVizr, V-I-Z-R. It's a sound-alike, NeuroVizr.com. And, you can always indirectly get me through that. that's probably the most comfortable way. I'm a little disinclined to give my email and my phone number, but if you go to the website and you're a nice person, I'll definitely be happy to contact you.
Super. That's it. Thanks, bro. It's been great.
Bro, okay. Give your lovely wife a hug, and thank you, VESA. I appreciate you. I admire your work, and I really, your art is a psychoactive agent for me. So thank you.
That's if I can put that in writing as a recommendation, that would be super.
Well, you can quote me. Just give me a piece of your art.
Deal.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Later, buddy.
Bye.